I think we take lighting for granted. In our homes, we really can't live without it, and with countless options for fixtures and lamps, like this one, we can easily design our interior lighting to suit the style of our homes. And yet, when it comes to our live shows, so many of us will just rely on the same basic stage lighting setup in any given venue that countless other acts have used before us. The truth is, it's called a show for a reason, and your audience is coming to watch you perform. So why not make the visual aspect of your shows just as unique as your set? That's why I originally designed the Petal modular lighting system with these classic tube-style fixtures here. But in this video, I'm going to attempt to design and build 5 brand new custom fixtures for this rig, each using a different range of tools and materials, just to prove that you can easily create a custom light show that will truly set your shows apart from the others. And make sure not to miss the reveal at the end of the video. So for the first fixture, I will be using basic woodworking tools to add an LED strip down the middle of this wooden post. This should have a cool rustic meets futuristic vibe, which I think will be pretty unique and appropriate for certain stages.
I start by measuring the beam and cutting it down to about 4 feet in length.
And just a reminder, if you have long hair like me, always remember to tie it up before using any power tools.
With the beam cut down to size, I mark out the width of this aluminum C-channel, which will house the actual LED strip. I then measured the depth of the channel against my table saw blade. The plan here is to cut a slot out of the beam by first cutting the outer edge of the slot and making sure the channel fits before running a series of cuts in between the first 2 lines. Once I confirm the fit, I shift my table saw fence over just a tad and start making the additional cuts until I've removed enough material to slide the channel into the slot.
Well, I messed up already. I messed up already. I moved the fence the wrong way, and I cut the line outside instead of inside. So I'm just going to flip this over and do the other side.
In my previous videos, I've always built the project before I start making a video about it, all while doing my best to remember to try and film as much as I can as I build. However, I usually end up forgetting to film most of the time, so I am trying to make videos now where I actively film the entire process from start to finish, and it turns out it's super easy to make silly mistakes when dividing my focus between building and filming. But I do hope that y'all will enjoy seeing more of the actual struggles and complications that go into bringing these builds into reality. After a quick cleanup with my chisel, I insert the channel and mark it to be cut down to size. As I've mentioned in previous videos, aluminum can be cut on woodworking tools, just take it real slow, or use a hacksaw if this makes you nervous. I can now drill a couple holes through the aluminum and screw it down to the beam, making sure the screw heads are flush inside the channel. For the next step, I need to drill a 33mm sized hole in the bottom of the beam to accept the Petal plug, which will provide power and data to the LEDs, but I think this is a really good time for me to show you why this plug and socket system is going to make designing your custom lights so darn easy.
You see, every light fixture in the Petal lighting ecosystem consists of an LED light source and a plug, which is just a 3/4 inch plumbing PVC coupler with some holes to accept these screws, which act as electrical contacts. For the light source, I like to use 24 volt RGB or RGBW cob LED strips, and I'll explain why I prefer this specific type of LED strip later on in the video, but that's really all you need to start getting light out of this system. Ultimately, you'll want to mount the LED strip and plug onto something rigid, so when you plug it in, this cable spool actually ends up being the stand for your light fixture. But I wanted to show you this because I want to emphasize the fact that beyond these 2 components, the options are really endless for what you can do with this setup. The next thing, I just need to add a little path for the wire to go into the hole and out through the top of the aluminum channel here. So I'm just going to drill straight down a little bit past the depth of my hole, and then in the center of the hole I will also drill a second hole that will go all the way through and meet up with the hole here.
And I actually didn't have a 33mm drill bit handy, so I just used a 35mm spade bit and wrapped some tape around the plug just so that it would fit snug.
Okay, that's feeling pretty solid. And you could add a screw through the wood to hold the socket in place, but honestly, this is so tight, I don't think it's ever going to come out again. Fairly straight up and down.
At this point, I was ready for the final stage of the process, installing the LEDs, and this is pretty straightforward. I took some of my 24-volt RGBW cob LED strip and measured it along the beam and cut it at the nearest cut point. Now, I really love these cob-style LED strips as they look practically seamless already, especially compared to those standard LED strips we've all seen before, which require some sort of diffusion in order to hide the hot spots from the individual LEDs. Being basically seamless without the need for diffusion means you can basically just slap these cob strips on any structure you like and you'll have yourself a custom fixture. In my previous fixtures, I used just the basic RGB version of these strips, which do have a smaller pixel density. However, I really wanted to try these ones out as they have a dedicated white channel as well for more accurate white colored lights.
And that's basically it for fixture number 1 there. For fixture number 2, I'm going to use this 8-foot aluminum pole, and I'm going to try and build this with just a drill and a soldering iron, which is just about as close to zero tools as you can get. So my plan is to create kind of a futuristic street lamp sort of fixture by adding a smooth 90-degree bend at around the 1-foot mark on this pipe here. Now, if you've ever tried to bend a pipe before, you'll know that it's easier said than done, as a pipe will tend to kink at the bend as opposed to bending smoothly.
After some research, I figured out a nifty way to do this without any tools that should work, but I've never tried this before, so let's give it a shot. Basically, if I fill the pipe with sand and pack it in enough, the sand should be able to prevent that kinking from happening.
This is the greatest thing I've ever built, I think. This funnel's just pure engineering genius, as far as I'm concerned. Oh yeah. All right. Let's see. That didn't work at all. See, my problem is the sand is, it's not dry enough, so it's clumping together, so it won't go through my funnel. Okay, so actually I've got a sandwich bag here. I'm gonna try and do the little baking technique when you're making like deviled eggs or whatever, and you cut the little corner and you can squeeze it out. Let's see if that works. I need to find a better way. So I was having so much trouble getting the sand into the pipe because it was so wet and clumpy. I'm gonna try drying the sand out in the sun on this piece of cardboard here, and hopefully once it's dry enough, it should flow through a funnel a lot easier. So while this dries, we can start working on fixture number 3. So for this next fixture, I wanted to create some sort of like stacked array type of thing. So I have some of this flat aluminum trim, and basically I want to cut this into sections and stack them horizontally. And I want to add a nice little curve to it. So basically I'm going to use this scrap wood here to build a frame that I can bolt these sections onto, and I don't really have a plan for this, so let's just see how things go.
Using the actual trim piece, I was able to trace a nice curve onto the scrap piece of wood, which in hindsight would have been much easier with a second set of hands since the trim kept wanting to spring back, but I eventually figured out a very scientific hold down method.
There's the setup. And now you can see it's along those points. Looks nice, goes right to the edge there. And so I'll trace this out now.
I will be needing 2 of these shapes, so I used some double-sided tape to attach another piece of scrap wood so I could cut both at once. I highly recommend against the tape I used, which I think is meant for carpet installations, as it was an absolute nightmare to remove.
I've added a couple more lines here just to get the overall shape of the design on here. And before I bring this over to the bandsaw to cut it out, I need to create a stand that this will bolt onto. to bring it up to a reasonable height. So I have these 3/4 inch PVC pipes that I actually took from my bulb fixtures that I showed off in my first video, and you'll notice the pipe goes directly into the socket piece. So this is a really, really effective way to get a stand that goes right into the socket, very little fussing around, and basically all I need to do is just find a spot where I want this to mount, trace it out, and then I can drill that hole there.
I'll be honest, I haven't used this bandsaw nearly enough recently, so I was pretty eager to find a use for it in this video, but you could certainly just use a jigsaw for this instead. Next, I drilled out the hole for the PVC pipe, making sure not to go all the way through so the fixture doesn't just slide down the pipe after it's inserted. I cut 2 small wooden uprights which will go between the top and the bottom pieces we just made. All these parts can be assembled together using some wood glue and brad nails. With the frame of the fixture built, I got an eyeball measurement of the aluminum trim before cutting it into 4 equal sections, which I then taped together and drilled a hole in either end of all 4 pieces at once. This will allow me to screw the 4 pieces onto the frame, once again making sure the screw heads are flush with the surface of the trim, as we will be mounting our LED strips to them. Once I confirmed the trim pieces would bolt on correctly, I removed them so I could add a nice coat of black paint to the frame, which I will have to let dry, so in the meantime,
I wanted to take a second to address the tube fixtures that I've featured in all of my previous lighting rig videos and what the future of those fixtures might look like. This is the original tube fixture I made. It's just a fluorescent tube guard from Home Depot with some parchment paper inside to diffuse the hot spots coming off the standard LED strip. These worked well, but as soon as I switched to the Cobb style LED strips, which opened up a huge amount of fixture possibilities that didn't require diffusion, I still ended up making 2 new styles of tube fixtures for my next video, the stackers and the teletubes, because it turns out everyone loves the tube fixtures. These ones still use the Home Depot fluorescent tube guards, but this time I just sanded them down instead of tediously lining the tubes with parchment paper because I just didn't need the same level of diffusion. Since that video, we have started selling kits of the whole lighting rig, but as many of you know, we have yet to include fixtures in these kits because despite the fact that they looked super cool, and I think they are amazing for the DIYer to put together due to their simplicity, I just never felt like it was a high enough quality product to sell, mostly due to the flimsiness of the tubes and the fact that shipping something of this size, despite weighing practically nothing, would be unreasonably expensive. So this is partly why I'm making this video, because I hope it inspires some of you to maybe try designing something more custom or specific for your light shows before defaulting to a tube design. Now, that being said, the tubes are pretty sick, and I might be jumping the gun a bit here, but I do believe we have finally come up with a solution to selling tube fixture kits that are decently priced and of higher quality. I plan on making a detailed video about designing both these new fixtures as well as the previous tube fixtures, but we are still in the thick of things, so unfortunately you will have to wait for that video to see what we have planned. But I promise I will try to get that video out much quicker than this one. Until then, let's get started on our final fixture. Okay, so for our final fixture, I'm gonna do something totally custom, and I'm gonna create basically a LED neon sign of my Super Valid Designs logo.
For this one, I'll be using my CO2 laser, which is a bit of a flex, I know, but like the bandsaw fiasco, this result can also be achieved by using a jigsaw. Using some 1/8 inch MDF, I cut out a top piece which is the shape of my logo with a 7mm channel on the inside, which will help hold the neon LEDs in place, followed by a backer piece which is the exact same shape minus the channel that will provide much needed strength to the design. Once I had the 2 pieces cut out, I glued them together using some wood glue, completely forgetting about the channel in the top piece, which meant I had to clean the glue out of the channel before letting it sit for a couple hours. It's very rare I go through a build without making little mistakes like this, but hey, it's a learning experience. Once the glue dried, it was back outside to throw on a coat of black paint, which gave me some time to finally get back to fixture number 2 and my sand drying experiment.
Okay, So the sand has been roasting for a few hours. Look at that. And I've grown up and I've got a real boy's funnel. That's gonna work perfectly, I think.
With the sand fully dried, I was able to fill the aluminum pipe to the brim, making sure to pack it as tightly as possible. This is crucial because a soft spot could lead to the sand giving away at the bend point and ruining the aluminum tube beyond repair.
Now for the moment of truth, let's see if this bending technique actually works. I've got this post that I found in the yard. It's got kind of the diameter I'm looking for the bend, so I'm gonna just stick this on my workbench here, and we're just gonna give her. Seeing some stressing on the aluminum here, but I think that's okay. So far so good. It's all right. It's bulging a little bit at the edges, but I think that'll be okay. I am gonna kind of cheat a little bit. I'm gonna use a clamp on the other end here. One more tool. All right, let's move this operation to the ground. Now the problem with this is I won't be able to monitor the bend as I do it, but I'm just hoping. That's a lot of my building process is just trying things out and hoping. Let's give this a go. It's getting a bit of a crease in there that I don't love. But I'm hoping as I wrap around this pole, going slow. Yeah, that's looking not bad. That's looking not bad. I probably could have found something with a bit of a larger diameter, but we're in it now, folks. Okay. Not the cleanest thing ever, but not bad. I think a larger diameter would have made this a lot nicer. But we can go ahead with this for now. This looks pretty good, I think. Oh boy, it's packed in there. There we go. Pretty good amount of sand in there. So now we just need to add the piece that will mount it to the plug piece, which will then go into the socket. So for that, I went to the hardware store with one of my plug pieces, and I just kind of put together a few random plumbing pieces, and I just found one that fits right into the socket. So obviously that's just gonna go into there. And then it has a threaded part that goes into another threaded rod here like this. And this guy fits inside of the pipe. It's a little loose, so once again I will be using some tape just to solidify that a little bit, and then this should be able to fit right into the socket, and the spool should hold this whole thing up. Now the last thing we got to do before we install the LEDs on this bad boy is we got to take our socket with some wires, and basically we need these wires to come into this hole here and come out somewhere along here. I'm thinking basically right on that threaded part, because the socket's going to come right up to this hexagonal part here. So we'll drill a hole right there that we can get our little wires out, and then we'll be able to wire onto the LED strip, which will start right about here. It's going to be kind of an awkward thing to drill because of these little threads. I'm just going to give it a go and see what happens, and then I might need to reconsider my plan here. Okay, bigger bit. Let's give it a go. Okay. There we are. Now we can throw, so just keep in mind this will be the front, obviously, because that's where the LEDs are going to connect, so make sure the back of your plug is facing the right direction. Holy flies everywhere. Not too bad. I'm just going to grab a hammer. Pulling these through as I hammer it down a little bit. Great.
Like the wooden post fixture, I will be using the same LEDs by just sticking them right to the pole all the way up the entire thing until I reach the end where I can cut the strip at the closest cut point. Then it's back to the soldering bench to connect the plug to the LED strip and add a final touch of electrical tape to clean things up. It's not fancy, but it sure does the job. With fixture number 2 complete, we can finally wrap up fixture number 3, which I reassembled off camera. Again, I'm using the RGBW cob LEDs and attaching them with the adhesive backing directly to the aluminum trim. This time though, I have 4 separate LED strips which will all need to be wired together, so I made sure to alternate the direction of the LEDs like this, because with addressable LEDs they can only accept current in one direction. With the LEDs properly arranged, I simply cut some lengths of wire to solder them together. I decided to wrap the ends in electrical tape, starting by putting a bit of tape underneath the area I just soldered, just in case any of my solder joints were touching the aluminum. I'm not sure this was necessary, but just for peace of mind, really. Then it was time to insert the PVC pipe, which I made sure had enough excess wire sticking out to reach the end of the top LED strip. I added a small notch at the end of the pipe so that the wires had somewhere to exit. And with one final solder job, we can move on to the final stages of our last fixture, which is all dried up and ready for, you guessed it, LEDs. This time though, I used a different kind of LED strip called a neon LED strip, which is actually a standard LED strip with the individual LED chips, but it's wrapped in a silicone housing that not only diffuses hotspots, but redirects the light out the side of the strip, which lets the strip bend in practically any shape. These LEDs are really cool, but they are a little harder to work with as the silicone needs to be stripped back in order to access the copper pads to solder onto, which I did here. Knowing I will be soldering on this end, I need to drill a small hole here to allow 3 wires to poke through from the back, so I cut a length of wire that is long enough to trace the design all the way to the middle where I plan to mount a PVC pipe as the stand. Then I drilled the hole and fed the wires through and soldered them to the LED strip before doing the satisfying job of, oh, deviled eggs, nice. Anyways, I soldered up the LEDs before the satisfying job of pressing the strip into the channel. For my design, since it has this pointy end to the channel, I made sure to cut the strip long, unfortunately sacrificing a segment of the LED strip in the process, but this allowed me to slice open the silicone and pull out the LED strip to cut along the cut point here, leaving me with some excess silicone that I can cut into the perfect angle for my design. With the LED strip in place, I flipped the fixture over and hot glued the wire along the back of my design towards the area where it will meet up with the wire coming out of the PVC pipe, which I am going to install now. This was a simple matter of drilling some holes and screwing them together, making sure my fixture was sitting straight. A quick final solder between the LED wire and the pipe wire, and the final fixture is complete. At last, we can get to my favorite part of the video, the reveal.
Look at all these fixtures, I've got a mixture of styles. In just a few parts, you too can customize the perfect light show for your spectator's eyes. And you'll stand out from all the other guys. You should build a light show. It'll make your stage more beautiful. You will shine oh so bright, and your show will come alive.
So there it is. It was pretty darn easy to slap these new fixtures together, and even if these fixtures don't suit the specific look you're going for, I hope at the very least this video serves as some inspiration for you to go and design something completely custom for your own needs. I think each of these 4 new fixtures have some pretty cool features to them, and... What's that?
Isn't it supposed to be 5?
Oh. Actually, one sec, I'll be right back.
There's one more fixture. It was the lamp the whole time.
Okay, that's enough of that. I think we're done here.